Hello there, Welcome. You've chosen to drift into the quiet folds of time, where history moves slowly, like lantern-lit evenings and the rustling of silk robes in the wind. Tonight, we're traveling far east, to the islands of Japan, but not to the samurai films and manga stories you might expect. No, our journey tonight takes us to the quieter truths, the ones hidden behind polished armor and perfectly drawn swords. You've probably heard the legends, noble samurai with shining katana blades, leaping through bamboo forests, bound by honor, courage, and beauty in motion. But beneath the legend lies another Japan, a harsher Japan, one of worn sandals, endless marshes, stiff backs, and strict rules. The life of a samurai footsoldier or ashigaru was not glamorous. It was routine, repetitive, exhausting, often uncomfortable. And tonight, we begin there. So settle into your bed or favorite chair, let your muscles soften, let the lights dim behind your eyes, and let yourself begin to wander not in excitement, but in gentle curiosity. Let's begin with the ashigaru, the men who stood in rows and waited to die. Measured tone, deep detail, but slow and easy to follow. Imagine yourself in the early 1500s, in the era before Japan was unified under one ruler. The land is divided among warlords, or daimyo, each vying for power and territory. Battles are constant, borders shift like clouds, and armies are always on the move. Now imagine you're not a noble, not a trained samurai of great repute, but a peasant, and now a peasant with a spear. You are The term ashigaru literally means light feet, a reference to the fact that you are not weighed down by heavy armor. But the truth is, your feet feel far from light. You march 4 days, over rocky paths and through thick forest. You sleep in damp camps or under makeshift shelters, often with little food or warmth. You were not born into the warrior class. You were a conscripted dealer lured by the promise of food, pay, or simply ordered by your local lord. And now, you belong to the army, not by blood, but by duty. In your hands is a spear, long and wooden, its blade sharp but simple. You're taught how to hold it, how to brace in formation. Drills are constant, the same motions, again and again. Stab forward, step back, form a wall, hold the line, day after day, until the body moves before the brain can think. Your superiors often proper, samurai watch closely. Discipline is severe. If you falter in training, you may be beaten. If you falter in battle, well, faltering in battle is rarely survivable. Your meals are plain. A bowl of rice, perhaps a small portion of dried fish or pickled vegetables, if you're lucky. Water is drawn from streams, or carried in sloshing gourd bottles tied at the hip. The armor you wear, if you have any, is little more than stitched together plates, or lacquered leather. It's heavy, it restricts your breathing, it's often second-hand, handed down from those who no longer need it, whether due to old age, injury, or death. When battle comes, you don't rush into a heroic duel. You stand in line. You wait for the signal. The wind might be cold. The ground might be soaked. You're surrounded by men like you, silent, focused, nervous. And then, the drums begin. You move forward, not as yourself, but as a Rohan extension of a single commander's will. If you're lucky, you'll never see the face of the man you're meant to stab. You'll just feel your spear hit something, or someone, and then you'll move on. The ones who hesitate often die. The ones who survive do so not by glory, but by being fast, alert, and a little lucky. And after the chaos, if your lord wins, there might be some plunder, perhaps some silver, maybe a bit of cloth. But often, there is nothing. No reward, no thank you. Just a new march, a new battle. A few days of rest might follow, in a cramped village or on temple grounds. You may be allowed to visit your family if they're nearby, or not. There are more campaigns coming. The war never ends. There is no pension, no glory recorded in scrolls. When you die, your name may be written in a temple ledger, or forgotten entirely. And yet, still, you march. Still, you drill. Still, you serve. Because to refuse is treason. And because the only thing worse than marching for a warlord is being at the mercy of one. Let's take a breath here. Notice how quiet it is around you now. Imagine the rhythm of those drills, the crunch of feet in the gravel, the soft creak of armor, the steady, repeating beat of a life given over to war not in glory, but in obligation. The life of an ashigaru was not celebrated, but it was lived by tens of thousands, and they, too, shaped Japan. Now, from the dusty roads of marching footmen, we turn to another figure of legend, a man who rejected orders, traveled alone, and became myth. When you're ready, we'll begin our next segment. The real Miyamoto Musashi. Now that we've walked among the ranks of forgotten foot soldiers, let's drift to a quieter path, a solitary path, a wandering road through misty mountains and along rivers lined with pine. Let me introduce you to Miyamoto Musashi. You may have heard the name before, perhaps in stories, video games, or the pages of manga. A duelist without equal, a swordsman who never lost, a mysterious warrior who walked alone and wrote a book on strategy so timeless it's still read today. But tonight, we don't chase the myth, we let it settle like dust and look underneath at the man, the quiet, disciplined man who chose the way of the sword not for glory but for mastery. Let us begin, slowly, with his childhood. Musashi was born, likely, in the year 1584, during the final decades of the Sengoku Jidai, Japan's warring states period, a time when life was rarely peaceful and war lingered behind every season. His birthplace was Harima Province, now part of modern-day Hyōgo Prefecture, land of hills, trees, and military tension. He was not born into wealth or noble status. His father was a martial artist and possibly a lower-ranking samurai or retainer. From a young age, Musashi learned discipline, harsh discipline, sword practice, body control, mental stillness. By the time most children still chased insects in the grass, Musashi was sharpening his instincts and his blade. At just 13, he is said to have fought his first duel. His opponent, a trained samurai. The outcome, Musashi won, not with elegance, not with refined swordplay, but with raw intensity, with a wooden sword, likely, and a sharp awareness of timing. Already, the seeds of his unorthodox style were forming. As Musashi grew, Japan itself changed. The wars that had raged for over a century were ending. In 1600, the Battle of Sakigahara brought the Tokugawa clan to power, beginning a long era of peace. But peace was not Musashi's way. He chose to remain a Ronin samurai without a master, not out of shame or failure, but by design. He wandered from province to province, on foot, through valleys, into towns, sleeping in temple courtyards or forest clearings, always alone. He challenged other swordsmen, not to the death, usually, but to test skill, to refine form, to learn. It's said he fought over 60 duels, and lost none. But these were not duels of fanfare. Many were quick, many were psychological. He often arrived late, frustrating opponents. He sometimes used two swords, sometimes just a wooden one, and sometimes he fought with a carved oar or walking stick, because to Musashi, the weapon was less important than the rhythm, the timing of battle. His style became known as Naiten, Ichiraya, two heavens as one, a method that emphasized the use of both long and short swords simultaneously. Balance, awareness, unity, but always, the sword was a path, not a destination. What many forget is that Musashi was not only a fighter, he was also an artist, a calligrapher, a painter, a carver of wooden statues, a writer. He sought not only strength, but stillness, not only victory, but understanding. Later in life, after decades of wandering and conflict, Musashi retired to a cave Raganda near Kumo. There, surrounded by rock and silence, he wrote his most famous work, the Book of Five Rings. It is not a book of bloody conquest. It is a book of perception, of strategy, of how to see not with the eyes, but with the spirit. Its pages speak of emptiness, clarity, rhythm, and presence, lessons for combat, but also for life. He wrote with the same calm as he fought, no flourish, no fear. Musashi died in 1645, alone, in that cave, not in a blaze of battle, but in peace, in awareness. His grave lies on a quiet slope in Kumamoto. No grand temple, no gold, just stone, and grass, and birdsong. Today, he is remembered as a near-mythic figure. But as you lie here tonight, drifting in and out of thought, try to remember him not as a warrior of fantasy, but as a man of solitude, a man who walked his path slowly, with intention, who honed not just his blade, but his mind, and who, like all of us, sought clarity in a noisy world. Pause. Let the image of Musashi fade now, like mist rising from the mountains after rain. From his solitude, we now turn to the shadows, to another figure of Japanese history, less honored, more hidden, not the sword-wielding samurai but the silent steps of the ninja. Now, let your mind follow the sound of night insects, a moon barely rising, the air still, the fields silent, the leaves unmoving. You are in feudal Japan once more, but this time you are not among the marching soldiers. You are not standing shoulder to shoulder, spear in hand. You are alone. You are a shinobi, what most now call a ninja, but not the kind that spins through the air in movies. Not the flashy, fantasy figure of black masks and smoke bombs. No, the real ninja moved differently, quieter, slower, with less honor, and far more purpose, and their world was rarely cool. The true roots of the ninja remain elusive. Like shadows themselves, they emerge and vanish throughout history. But we believe the earliest shinobi tactics took shape during the Sengoku period. The warring states, Iro and warlords needed not only force, but subtlety. Some shinobi came from samurai backgrounds. Many did not. They came from villages tucked into mountains, places like Iga and Koganims that would later become almost mythical. But in their time, these were simply regions with men and women who learned to move unseen. They were scouts, messengers, saboteurs, infiltrators, spies. In war, they crept into enemy camps to steal plans, poison wells, or set fire to stores of food. They climbed walls, disguised themselves, hid in reeds and underfloor. They rarely fought directly. If they did, something had gone terribly wrong. The image of a ninja wielding a straight-bladed sword and vanishing in a puff of smoke is mostly invention, but the real tools they used were just as clever. A simple read-aloud breathing underwater, a pair of ash-covered feet left fewer prints, soft-soled sandals let them run silently, hooks and rope, small mirrors, blackened blades, even crickets in cages to mask movement. Their weapons were chosen not for beauty but for quiet efficiency. A short blade, easier to conceal. A collapsible staff, sometimes farming tools, used not to raise suspicion. Many traveled as monks, merchants, or peasants. Blending in was key. Silence was survival. There were no grand ceremonies, no titles earned for bravery. If you succeeded, no one knew. If you failed, no one would admit you existed. The life of a shinobi was isolating. You had to lie constantly, even to friends, even to family. You lived in half-truths, in missions whispered in back rooms, in coded messages. You walked village paths by day and rooftops by night, your movements calculated, your words few. Sometimes you've waited days for a single moment. Sometimes you crawled on your belly through mud and weeds. Sometimes you were captured, and when that happened, your employer would disavow you. Even in their own time, shinobi was seen as dishonorable, beneath the warrior class. Dirty work, necessary, perhaps, but shameful. There are few shrines to ninja, few poems, few names remembered. They lived like ghosts and faded like them. Today, many of the tales about ninja have grown fantastical. Vanishing techniques, magic scrolls, walking on water. But beneath the myth is something perhaps more impressive. The discipline to be forgotten, the skill to leave no mark, the strength to do what needed to be done without recognition or reward. Shinobi tactics weren't glamorous. They were methodical, patient, and often uncomfortable. Imagine crouching in a drainage ditch for hours. Imagine hiding under a floor, listening to a conversation, hardly breathing. Imagine watching someone carry out your instructions, poison slipped into a bowl and then walking away, invisible. It wasn't exciting. It was cold. It was calculated, and yet vital. Pause now. Breathe in deeply. Imagine the quiet after the mission, the long walk home through forest trails, the sound of bamboo leaves brushing against your sleeve, the knowledge that no one will thank you, that tomorrow there may be another message, another task, another risk. Let it all settle into silence now. Let the shadows fold away and fade, because next we step into a very different kind of silence. The stillness, not of secrecy but of ritual, of soft-spoken words, of warm steam rising from a ceramic bowl, of tea. When you're ready, we'll sit beside a daimyo and witness the artful, deliberate quiet of the elite. Tone, delicately immersive, meditative, gentle. Language becomes even more tranquil, slow, and rhythmic. mimicking the quiet elegance of the tea ceremony. Now, let the night soften further. The air grows still. The sword is sheathed. The shadows have passed. You're no longer among soldiers or wanderers, but within high wooden walls, behind a gate of carved cedar. The scent of incense lingers. The floor beneath your feet is polished, smooth, cool to the touch. You are now a guest in the world of the elite, a world not of warfare but of war or harmony, a place where power is expressed not in violence, but in the curve of a teacup, the placement of a scroll, the angle of a bat. Welcome to the chaji, the Japanese tea gathering. More than a drink, more than a ritual, an atmosphere of total attention. Let us walk quietly through this refined world, step by step. The host is a daimyo, a powerful feudal lord. Perhaps he commands thousands, perhaps he owns but here, in the tea room, all of that vanishes. He bows as you enter, not as a ruler, but as a fellow participant in quiet appreciation. The Chushitsu tea room is small, maybe no larger than 3 tatami mats. Walls are plain, no gold, no clutter, one carefully chosen hanging scroll, one arrangement of seasonal flowers in a bamboo vase. It is a world within a world, a pause from the chaos of governance and the weight of war. You kneel. The floor smells faintly of straw. The walls breathe with the season. A summer breeze filters through a paper screen. Light dapples the floor like ripples in a pond. Everything here is intentional. Nothing is rushed. Every step, every gesture has meaning. First, you are served a simple milkazeki, not grand, just enough. A sliver of pickled radish, a warm broth, a rice dish, perhaps with a touch of seasonal fish. Each course a reflection of the moment, its mood, its weather. Then, a pause. The host leaves, then returns to begin the tea preparation. He moves with studied calm, not slow out of hesitation, but out of reverence. The tea kettle is already heating. Its lid gently clicked aside. The steam rises, a thread of breath in the stillness. He purifies the tea scoop, then the bowl, with precise folds. He uses a fine silk cloth fukuzi to clean each object, though they are already spotless. The act is not about cleanliness, but mindfulness. Each sound is clear. The click of bamboo, the light tap of ceramic, the hush of whisk bristles brushing matcha into foam. He prepares the tea, lifts the bowl, and turns it toward you, not directly, but at an angle, so as not to face you with power. You bow, you accept. You turn the bowl, so as not to drink from its front out of respect. You sip. Quietly. The tea is bitter, rich, green as moss, a taste that stills the tongue. You return the bowl. Another bow. No words are needed. What you have experienced is not simply a drink. It is a conversation without speech, a ceremony without spectators, a meditation without solitude. It is an expression of wabi-sabi beauty in imperfection. The bowl may be chipped, the bamboo whisk may be worn, but here, that is not flaw. It is depth. It is realness. This is how the elite reminded themselves of humility, of stillness, of being present, even for those surrounded by armies and riches. As the ceremony ends, the host bows once more. The guests rise slowly. No rush, no clamor. Outside, the sun has shifted. The day is older now. The world waits beyond the garden gate. But for a little while, within these walls, time moved differently. You are not just restored, you are returned to your senses, to the quiet. Pause. Now, let your breath be like that steam from the kettle, soft, rising, dissolving. Let the memory of war, of blades, of strategy and sabotage fall away like petals from a plum tree. You've walked many roads tonight, from mud-stained battlefields, to the silent path of a ronin, to the hidden crawl space of a spy, and finally, to the humble stillness of a tea bowl. Let's now bring it all to rest. We'll close our journey in the next few minutes with a final reflection, a calming conclusion. When you're ready, we'll step into the final chapter. Conclusion. Sleeping in silk and memory. Now, we've reached the edge of the evening. The path is no longer ahead, but behind you. The candle has burned low. The sword has been set aside. The garden is quiet. Let your breath become long, steady, comfortable. You've traveled through centuries tonight, but never with haste. You walked beside the wary Footsoldier Ashigaru, marching not toward glory, but toward duty. You felt the weight of his armor, the rhythm of his drills, the silence of a name forgotten. Then you followed the footsteps of Miyamoto Musashi, not through battlefields, but across forest paths and into caves of solitude. You witnessed a man shape himself through discipline, reflection, and stillness. Later, you crouched in the quiet of a hidden world. You learned the ninja was not a shadow of magic, but of patience. Not the enemy of honor, but its uninvited sibling, necessary, silent, and alone. And finally, you knelt in a tea room. You bowed, you sipped, you breathed, and the power of a feudal lord was transformed into a humble act of presence. These lives, so different from your own, and yet somehow familiar, each one seeking meaning in structure, clarity in repetition, peace in movement, or stillness. The past is not always loud. It does not always shout with flags or clash with swords. Sometimes it whispers beneath floors, in old scrolls, behind screens of rice paper. And now, as you lie there, warm and still, know that you've touched those whispers. You have drifted, slowly, through another world. And now, it releases you. The past is folded away, like a kimono after the rain. The echoes fade. The night deepens. Let yourself sleep now, not with dreams of battle or duels, but of quiet gardens, slow footsteps, steam rising from a cup. The journey is done. You are home. Good night.